Hi, welcome to the first lesson of grade 7. My name is Paul, and I'll be teaching you throughout this year. So really today is just an introductory lesson. And actually over the first couple lessons we're just going to work on some strategies for writing, how to prepare to write an essay. So we'll go through the first steps of preparing to write an essay, and then we'll move up to the more complicated parts of doing that. After those first couple lessons, then we'll get into the actual books that you'll be reading. So for today, we'll just go through a really kind of basic introduction of the kind of writing that you might be expected to do. So the first thing to take note of is in English, and really as in any language, there are different levels of language, right? A way to think about this is there's different levels of kind of dressing. So say, for example, you're going to a wedding, right? If you go to the wedding, you have to dress formally, right? That's the situation. It's a formal situation, so you're going to dress more formally. But if you're going to your friend's house, that's a completely different situation, and that we would say is perhaps a casual situation. So you will, of course, dress casually, right? So the idea here is that you have to know the context, you have to know the situation, and then make your decision whether you're going to be formal or casual or informal in that situation. Writing is the same way. So what we'll look at here is some different levels of language. Our highest level would be what we call formal writing. Formal writing, we say, is polite, impersonal, and really just conventional. You follow the rules. Now, where do we use this? Most academic articles or essays or even books are written in formal language. Professional or business writing, that's formal as well. Also, most of the essays you write for this year will be formal. Now, formal writing, you're going to use correct traditional punctuation, right? Correct spelling, of course. And you'll use formal language rather than casual language. So let's look at an example of some formal writing up here on the top. Now, what I've done actually is I've given almost the same idea in 3 sentences. The first sentence is in formal language. The second one has the same meaning, but it's more informal language. And then our third one is same meaning again, but now we're using casual language. So let's start with the formal one. So it says, Alice extended her story far beyond the limits of her friend's patience. And we have a semicolon. She has a tendency to be quite tiresome. Now, a couple of things to note with this. First of all, pretty careful with the punctuation. So you'll notice that there is a semicolon. Semicolon's generally considered to be more of a formal piece of punctuation. You can use it in casual writing, but we often associate it with more formal situations. The other thing to note here is that there are no idioms in this sentence. There are no idiomatic expressions. So that's step one, no idiomatic expressions. Also, there's in any case there's also no contractions. So it doesn't really come up here. But if I had to say like, she is boring, now I could contract that and say she's boring. But in formal writing, you do not use contractions. You say she is boring. You write it out the long way, no contractions. Now, as I said, you'll be using this probably most of the time in your writing for the semester, unless it's going to be creative writing. Now, next up is informal writing. Now, informal writing is a little bit more casual. It's also a little bit more personal, right? There's going to be a little bit more personal stuff here, as a more of a closer feeling. So when we say impersonal, we say there's a kind of distance between the writer and the reader. When it's personal, that space closes, right? It becomes a little bit more personal. As far as grammar goes, the grammar is always still conventional in informal writing. It's still basically just correct grammar. It's kind of careful grammar. Although you can use contractions in informal writing. So you can say, she's boring. You can do the contraction, the short form, in informal writing. The vocabulary, it's a little bit more like everyday speaking. Now, what does that mean? I will show you on the board. Everyday speaking in English means that there are idiomatic expressions. So when we speak in any normal situation, Americans and British people and Australians and New Zealanders, Canadians, we tend to use lots and lots of idioms. English is an idiomatic language. So I'll show you some of the idioms and give you examples of that. Now, where do we use this? Well, typically speeches use informal writing styles. Newspapers use more or less the informal style, right? There will be idiomatic expressions or idiomatic phrases in newspapers. Magazines use informal writing, okay? So let's have a look at an example of informal writing. Here we have Alice dragged her story out way beyond her friend's patience. She can be really boring at times. Now, where is the idiom here? You'll notice a big difference if we return to this. Extended her story far beyond the limits of her friend's patience. Now, dragged her story out way beyond her friend's patience. So what you'll notice here is an idiom right here. Dragged her story out. So idioms often are when you take a verb and then you add on a preposition, you create a new meaning with it, and you get an idiomatic expression. So that's our first thing here. It's a little bit more casual. It's a little bit more personal, right? This is the way we would say it when we're speaking. Now, that's the key here, is there's a kind of spoken feeling here. So if I'm talking to a friend and explaining the situation, I would say dragged out, not extended her story far beyond. And then you'll notice another change. I used, up here, I used far beyond, okay? And then down here, I use way beyond. So way is a little bit less formal than far when we're chunking it with beyond. Now, you notice the grammar stays the same. There's no major changes with grammar. I use a bit more of a casual method down here. She can be, and then I use really rather than quite. I think really is a little bit more informal than quite. And then I use, up here, I use tiresome, right? Tiresome's a little bit more of a formal word than boring. Right? Typically, when we're speaking, we'll just say, ah, she's boring. However, you know, you can move up the ladder. You can go with higher language, and higher language really is kind of tiresome, right? It makes you tired talking to her. Now, our third kind of writing is casual writing. Now, the key with casual writing is that it's very, very light. Right? There's something very light about it. The goal of it is, you just want to draw the reader in. You want to make the reader feel very kind of relaxed. It's like you want to make the reader feel at home, right? Like they're talking to a friend. So here, it's like contractions, you can use them. No problem with contractions. Slang is fine. Colloquial language, idioms, all of it can go in there. Now, when do we use this? If you're writing an email to a friend, definitely you're going to use casual writing. If you're writing in your journal, you can use casual writing. Sometimes in magazines and newspapers, they're going to use casual writing. Okay? If it's just sort of a light section of the newspaper, like an advice column, they might just use casual writing. You can also use it if you're doing creative writing, right? So if you're writing a story. If you want to create a certain mood or tone, you're going to use this sort of language. So if you're writing a story about teenagers, well, then you might use a lot of teenage slang in your story. That will make it feel more real. So that's perfectly fine. However, if you're writing an essay, like a book report for this class, you don't want to use casual writing. Now let's have a look at our example of casual writing. Up here we have Alice dragged her story out way longer than she had to. And then we have a period. She just went on and on and on. Period. Basically, her friends just got sick of listening to her. She's so lame, right? Now, it has basically the same meaning as these ones, but it looks a lot different, doesn't it? Now, you notice we still maintain our idiomatic expression here, dragged out, and then we use way longer, and then I just use this very casual, then she had to. And then I don't even bother with a semicolon. A semicolon feels a little bit too formal, so I just stop. And then I just say, she went on. Another idiomatic expression, on and on and on, right? And then I use this basically. Basically is very much a word that we use in spoken English. I actually just used it about a minute ago. Basically, her friends just got sick of, right? Another idiomatic expression. And then we finish with she's so lame. So you'll notice, of course, here there's the contraction, she's rather than she is. And then I finish with a piece of slang. Lame. Lame just means kind of stupid or silly or dumb, right, is lame. So like, for example, if I say a movie is lame, it just means I didn't like that movie. It was dumb. It was stupid. I didn't like it. Now I'm describing Alice as lame because she's so boring. Now, that's the idea. Now, as I was saying before, you want to consider your audience. Who is going to read this? And what are they looking for? Whenever you sit down to write, you have to consider your audience. Now, depending on your audience, that will then dictate how you write. So if your teacher, generally your teacher will tell you, this is a creative writing assignment. Feel free to use casual language. But when your teacher gives you a kind of book report, well, then you know you're going to be using much more formal language. Try to stay away from the casual stuff when you're writing. Now, next step here, I got to erase the board. Once your teacher gives you an assignment, what are you going to do? The first thing you have to do when a teacher gives you an assignment is to choose a topic. Right? First step is choose a topic, right? Well, when it comes to choosing a topic, typically when you read a book, a teacher is going to give you a couple possibilities, and you'll always have a choice. Now, the important thing is to choose a subject that is interesting to you. Sometimes when you see a list of 4 topics, you might see one that looks easy, but you're not that interested in it. And then you might see one that's a little bit more difficult, but it's interesting to you. Okay? Always choose the interesting one. Don't just choose the easy one. Often once you start writing, the one that seems easy is not easy because you're not interested in it. And you can become bored. You can really get blocked. Whereas if you choose something that's more interesting, not only will you learn from it, but in the end, it will probably be a lot easier. Now, the next step typically is once you've chosen the topic, you're going to do brainstorming. Brainstorming is a really important part of the process. Now, brainstorming is quite simply just letting your mind go completely free. Right? Once you have a topic, you just sit down with a piece of paper and write down anything you can think of. Okay, so how do you brainstorm? Well, there's a couple ways. The first and most simplest way to do it is to take a clean piece of paper. Right? It's important. You want a clean piece of paper so your mind can just concentrate and just not have to worry. Then at the top of the paper, you're going to write a topic. And you'll write it in big letters right at the top of the paper. So I'll give you an example. Let's say, for example, your topic is good health. Right? That's your topic for your paper. Now, you have to sit down to do your brainstorming. So I've told you, clean piece of paper. Write in big letters your topic. In this case, good health. Second step with this is to give yourself a certain amount of time. Generally, what we think is 10 to 15 minutes. Actually, put yourself on a timer. If you have like a watch with a stopwatch part on it, just set it at 10 or 15 minutes. And so you put a kind of pressure on yourself. It's like you're forcing yourself to work quickly. Actually, scientists have found that we work better if we have a little bit of pressure on us. And then you just start writing. Write every idea that occurs to you. Right? Just write everything that comes to you. And then also, we say abbreviate. Abbreviate words when possible. You know, you don't have to write the whole word out. Just write a couple letters, just so you'll remember it, right? There's no reason that you have to waste time spelling the whole word. Just start the word, that's enough. That's enough. You can stop there. Go on to the next word. Just go as fast as you can and do as much as you can. Never judge the ideas. So if you write something down, don't worry if it's stupid. Just keep going. Don't worry about things that are smart or stupid. Just do anything that comes to your mind, right? Don't like revise while you're doing this. Next step, I think, is once your 15 minutes is done, take a break. So you do your brainstorming for 10 to 15 minutes. Take a break. Walk away from it. You know, eat a cookie. Go have a glass of water. It doesn't matter. Just walk away from it. Don't look at it, right? And then come back to it 5 minutes later. And then read through it, right? And now you'll look at it in a way that's kind of fresh. And you'll see some maybe angle or an idea for your paper, a way that you can do it. Now, that's the basic way of doing things. Now, there's a lot of different ways to brainstorm. Now, the first way is it's just the simple brainstorm. So, like, let's say I have a topic, good health. Now, I'm just going to write down anything. It's like good health. What does it take for good health? I'll say, I don't know, nutrition. Right? But I might just abbreviate that, right? I might just say nutrition. Now, I'll remember that when I go back to it. And I'll say, like, I don't know, exercise. Right? Exercise. I don't know, sleep. Right? If you sleep a lot. What else? Nutrition, exercise, sleep. Let's say, like, interesting. Stuff. I don't know. That seems stupid, but that's okay. It's just brainstorming. Maybe later I'll realize, okay, interesting stuff. That means that if you do stimulating activities, that's good for your mind. If doing stimulating activities is good for your mind, that makes you more healthy. Well, it's related. It's good enough, right? Oh, stress, right? Keep your stress down. Right? So now we've got a quick list. Right? And now I would do that for about 10 to 15 minutes. Then I'll walk away from it, right? I might walk away from that and then come back and say, and judge this. Now, this is just simple brainstorming. The next step with brainstorming could be what we call clustering. So we have, let's say this is like simple, the simple form, which we just did. Then I might do also clustering. Okay, clustering works like this. I looked at that simple list and I take the word nutrition, right? Now, what things can I connect to nutrition? I don't know. Let's say, I can start writing arrows. So I can say, okay, with nutrition, I don't know, types of food. And then, well, what are the types of food? Well, there's, I don't know, there's protein. What else is there? Fat. Carbohydrates. Let's see, what kind of carbohydrates are there? There's, isn't there like simple and complex? Fat, there's saturated, and then there's, I don't know, unsaturated, I suppose. That might work, who knows? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if this is good or not. I'm just getting ideas. Protein, I think, I don't know any kinds of protein. Maybe I have to study that. What other kinds of nutrition are there? Vitamins, I guess. That's related to nutrition. What kind of vitamins are there? Let's see, vitamin C. Where do you get vitamin C? Orange juice. What else is there? Oh yeah, there's minerals. Let's see, what is a mineral? Iron. Okay, and then where might I get, that's a funny looking C. Where might I get iron? Spinach. I think spinach has iron. Okay, so now I've got a full cluster of ideas. Right, I started with nutrition, so then I just start thinking of different kinds of things that connect to nutrition. Well, kinds of food, and then I think of these kind of groups. Protein, fat, carbohydrates. Then I think of little details about them. Down here, vitamins. I could think of more vitamins. B, B12, D. And then think of foods that connect to that. Minerals, iron. There's many more. Potassium. Doesn't matter. I can just keep coming up with minerals. And then just I think of foods that go with minerals. Now, the next step, which we'll do in the next lesson, actually, is outlining. Right? So after you've done this, there's another thing you can do, which is free writing. But we'll get into that in the next lesson, actually. So there's free writing. And then next up is we have outlining. Now, so far today we've gone through the idea of levels of writing. Okay, so you had your formal, informal, and casual, right? Then we had the idea of choosing a topic. Remember, you choose a topic that's interesting, not necessarily easy. Okay, and then you move on, and once you've chosen your topic, there's different ways you can brainstorm. I told you want to spend about 10 to 15 minutes. Time it. Okay, walk away from it. Come back. Right? You can use that simple form. Maybe once you've done the simple form, you can take things that are interesting and try clustering, like I did. I took one part of the simple one, like nutrition, and I clustered it into different topics. Next step, which we'll talk about in the next lesson, is free writing, and then we'll go on to outlining. So that's all we have for today. So next time, we'll get into outlining and as well as free writing. So I will see you then.